What is the hardest thing you've had to admit to yourself? That I'm not as smart as I think. All throughout elementary, middle, and high school, I was in the gifted program and always had teachers acting like I was a goddamn genius. It was reinforced even more by my parents. Then, I got to college and realized, damn, there are hundreds of people out there who are just as intelligent as me, and hundreds more who are even more intelligent. I always prided myself in my intelligence, and experiencing that kind of ruined everything for me. It doesn't bother me now, but it was something that took a minute to get used to. This is going back some years now, but the hardest thing for me is that I was going down the incel, friend zone nice guy road and I didn't even realize it. I was doing the whole, become friends with girl, start to fall for girl, never actually make my intentions known, drop cringy as fuck hints and then get salty and do the kindness coins for affection thing. Thank fuck I never went full incel with the women hating nasty shit, but I had to admit to myself that I wasn't actually being a nice person at all and I needed to make a change. I do miss the friendships I made, but it wasn't healthy for me to maintain them as friendships when I was wanting more that was never going to happen. It was making me miserable and jaded. I'm just happy I caught it when I did and made changes. That I wasn't okay. I needed help and medication. I needed therapy. I am worth giving a damn about. Edit. Hi all, for the record, these realizations came to me about 3 years ago. I was a compulsive liar, was a really angry guy and became bogged down in escaping and become addicted to video games. My ex-wife told me she wanted to leave. I was suicidal for a time. I went to the doctors because I couldn't figure out why life was so damn hard. I got medication. I got therapy. I'm still working on caring about myself. Years of bullying in high school made it hard to care. All of this has helped. And yes, I give a damn about myself and where my life is headed, is my mantra. P.S. Thanks for the upvotes, smiley face. There are a lot more people struggling out there. R/depression is one of these places. Helping to break the stigma around mental health can help these people a lot, and if you can let people know it's okay to ask for help. That I was never going to be able to raise my daughter. One of the big parts of getting custody of my daughter back was always going to be the ability to support her. If I had custody, there are programs that would have helped me with rent, food, clothing, etc. since my full-time 40-hour-a-week job didn't pay me enough to support her on my own. Ironically, since I couldn't apply for those programs without having custody, I couldn't prove an ability to take care of her. I was making enough money to support myself and pay my child support. Not little enough to get help to improve my life and not enough to improve my life on my own. Thus I had to accept that I would never again get to be more than a weekend dad. That my childhood abuse led to me only having toxic relationships with men on both sides. I would let men stomp all over me until I was a shell, and then, as a response, I would alienate any good men in my life out of trust issues. As soon as I took a step back and accepted my flaws, I managed to find a wonderful, stable relationship with a kind man. My relationships with the other good men in my life have flourished. It was hard to teach myself that not all men are evil, but it has ended up giving me a much more rewarding life. I'm 28. That I grew up in a world that imprinted toxic thoughts into my brain as a male. That I grew up in a world that exposes you to pornography at 10 and there are adverse effects of that. That I grew up in a world that imprints poor practices and thoughts about women and sex into my brain. Women as conquests, etc. The biggest pill to swallow is that if you do nothing proactively to combat these things, your mind will continue to be poisoned into adulthood and you will be a miserable and lonely loser. Dudes, take care of your mental health. This world is poisoning us, and it is our responsibility to make sure future generations of boys are raised with practical and compassionate ideals that will help them function in our society. That I need help. Throughout my life I have sucked at asking for help. It eventually manifested itself as a big problem of me driving myself into the ground with work/school loads and not considering taking time to relax or even to get myself a psych evaluation. I just thought my night terrors, flashbacks, vomiting episodes, and extreme sense of dread or sadness was just normal life stuff. I also sucked at asking for help on practical things that I struggled with. I thought asking for help would make me a burden. I didn't fix this problem until I worked with a team through a boot camp of sorts. My squad helped me realize that asking for help can help improve efficiency and expedite missions. I guess my main obstacle for both of these was thinking that what I am doing is easily achievable by myself and that asking was inconveniencing my peers. That I'm the only one holding myself back. Life got relatively tough and I gave up. After a few years, I realized that the only thing keeping me from being happy is myself, and that's because I succumbed to this belief that it wasn't possible for me to be happy anymore. You know that saying that life is what you make it? Well, I agree that some of us are dealt cards in life that are terrible and we have no control over, but it's how we push forward the best that we can after each card. Sorry for the rant, I'm procrastinating from doing my work, tongue sticking out. That I am controlling. With myself and sometimes with others. Most of the time I criticize myself so much and I live in constant disgust for myself. I force myself to do things, I try to control every aspect of my life. When things don't go as planned, I live in a huge disappointment and I punish myself by various things. I deliberately poison myself with smoke and alcohol, and I overeat till I puke sometimes just because I know it will hurt me, but I feel I don't deserve better. As for others, I try to help them so much that I become annoying. If there's an issue I've already solved, I really try to help them and tell them do this way, that way, because it will be okay. I learned that people just don't care and really want to mistake things. They do want to be wrong, but they want to do this alone, on their own. So they accept it's gonna end bad, but they still do it to mistake on their own. It's nice and sad at the same time. The fact that people don't like me very much. I get occasionally invited to some social events, but it's either by a couple of closer acquaintances that I have or by people who are common acquaintances of my closer acquaintances, and they feel obligated to do it. I am not sure if I have any real friends. There are a few people that I consider friends, but there are good reasons to think it's not reciprocal, as I'll explain later. Part of the problem is that I am not a social butterfly. I do fine in one-on-one conversations, but I am a bit lost in group environments. People mistake that for me being bored or standoffish, I suppose, and also they probably find me to be boring company. I also used to be reluctant to invite people anywhere and take the initiative in socializing. I felt that I would be bothering people and that I was not in the position to do it. A couple of years ago, I decided to be more proactive. I called some of my acquaintances to invite them to go out, nothing fancy, just to hit a pub, play pool, or go to see a movie. Turned down almost every single time. I tried with the same acquaintances at some intervals of time, 2 or 3 times per person, as to not overdo it. Out of about 20 attempts over a period of 2 months, I got one outing, and even that one sort of fizzled out as the other person just seemed disinterested in conversation and stated right off the bat that he doesn't have too much time. I know that people are sometimes genuinely busy, but I got the message. I am just not liked in general, so I have to deal with that. That the deterioration of my relationship over the past 5 months is largely because I was selfish and too overwhelmed by my own problems, couldn't look beyond my feelings and constantly took him for granted. And #X200B, also that I'm really not all that great, have a huge amount of issues which generally result in me being a petty, mean and insecure human being, and most of my life and interactions with others have been to try to make up for my crippling lack of self-worth. And #X200B, thanks for asking. I had a very solid group of friends after high school. This group involved people a few grades ahead and behind me. I'm graduating from college this year, and have gotten increasingly frustrated by their niche interests and inability to break out of the mold. Many people told me this is natural, but I didn't want to believe that I was outgrowing them. I've known them for about 10 years now. I realized that it wasn't a lack of effort for the friendship because they were bad people, but that we have so little in common anymore, even on a fundamental level. I still love and care for them. I've admitted to myself that things have changed, but that it is okay. I spent most of my adult life seeking out relationships that were unhealthy, didn't have the prospect of being long-term and mutually self-serving. It wasn't until I was ready to break the cycle. At that point I found a skilled therapist to walk me through my life. After countless sessions, I was able to give myself permission to be happy. At 52, we found each other and found love. Coming up on 7 years of discovery. Not always smooth sailing. But, we are in love. We found that one to cuddle. Edit, grammar. I think most people do. The important thing is that you acknowledge it. I've realized over the last few years that I'm extremely self-destructive. I tend to put myself into situations that are detrimental to my well-being. I think it started when my former fiancée broke off our wedding because I was losing my hair. It's a really long story, but her not finding me attractive anymore was essentially the main reason. I was hurt at first, but then figured, well, I'll move on and find someone else. Fast forward a few years and I've not had a single relationship since. I had to come to terms that I'm just not young or attractive anymore. Because of that, I have lived the last few years with just an overwhelming sense of hopelessness and an attitude that nothing matters. It has led me down some dark paths in order to somehow destroy myself, which it seems I have as I now have a brain tumor. So at least there is a little bit of peace in knowing that I never had a chance in this life anyway. But I am fairly certain that my choices and neglect created this situation I find myself in now. Don't be like me. I swear, telling me I was gifted was the worst thing public school could have done for me. Why, but I think it filled the gap that success should have filled. Bad grades? It's 'cause homework is bullshit, and if I tried I'd get great grades. Don't do as well on the test. If I studied, I'd be amazing. I had this hypothetical version of myself where I put in the work and actually did well, and for some reason it actually satisfied my desire to succeed. Turns out those honors kids that just actually tried were worth a lot more than good old gifted me because they were willing to actually try. I had the opposite experience. Throughout K-12 I was made to feel like an idiot loser who will never be anything. To the point that I effectively dropped out in the 7th grade. Started skipping most of the time, got expelled 4 times in high school, had no expectations beyond minimum wage, and probably prison. Going to college was a joke at the time. My father had moved to FL and wanted me to come live with him, contingent on my being enrolled in college. I knew I couldn't cut it. But the chance for a Midwestern boy to get to party in the land of MTV's spring break for a couple of semesters? Fuck yeah. Turned out I was actually smart enough for college. Not only that, but so smart that I was the one who people sought help from. Some even paid me to tutor them, without my ever having advertised such a service. It wasn't until I got into a tech career that I really felt stupid. These people can digest and become competent in something in _hours_. It takes me days to learn a new language or tech well enough to be productive. So I always feel under the gun on, why aren't I getting it done? What you need to understand is that there are hundreds more intelligent, but millions less. I had the same doubts, then realized I'm still good at what I do. Yes, I'm not the best engineer in the world, but I get the job done quickly, accurately, and as efficiently as possible while getting along with colleagues. No, I'm not at the forefront of technology in my field, but very few are. I fill a needed role well and am just as useful in the world as they are. Just think, if you are in the top 5% of your high school, you probably are fairly close to those in the top 5% of all other high schools. That makes you smarter, or a better student, than 95% of all of the people who attended high school.